What's going on, everybody? Back again for another episode of Sunday Reset with Will and Friends. And I'm so happy to have my guest here today. You've seen her before on my page. Her name is Rachael, and she is so delightful because we share such a similar passion when it comes to having actionable steps in growing your mental health. It's not just about talking about it, it's about having real plans and real execution. So, Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and yeah, it's good to be back.
Oh, I'm so glad. And you're going to be seeing her from time to time because, my value in this conversation, as I've said before, is the human aspect of this and resonating with people and telling stories that way. But it's also been well established. I care deeply about people seeking expertise in this conversation. And so Rachel, being a licensed therapist, being somebody who actually has true credentials, this is something that's really important to me. So, Rachel, before we were on this episode, you were telling me a term, and I know you coined it yourself, aggressive transition. Can you tell me a little bit about what that even means?
Yeah, so it is, again, I don't know if this is like a professional term that other people are already using, but it is something that I'm seeing pretty hardcore, I would say in the last like few weeks to even maybe the last couple months. Um, Essentially, it's like, say you're thinking about, oh, should I stay at my job? Should I leave the relationship? I don't know. You're kind of like in this pondering mode. And the aggressive transition that's happening right now is that like everybody's getting laid off or your partner breaks up with you. It is like this thing that we have been kind of sitting on that is like coming in full speed ahead, like with full intensity. Yeah, and so I just am seeing it come up a lot with people recently, and that's like the best way I could name it. So,
So, do you find that it's self-driven, like this is their way of taking back control? Or do you think it's more geared to like life threw them a curveball and they're like, well, this is my way of adapting?
I think 100% it's both of those things. It's kind
Okay.
of like on the side where somebody is like choosing it, it is kind of at that point where I am like fed up, I am maxed out, and like we're not going to take it anymore kind of vibe. And then on the other side, it's that I maybe knew for a long time I should have made a change, and I didn't. I was kind of either in that paralysis mode or that like stuck kind of mode, and so I didn't make the choice to make a change. Somebody else did, and so now I'm kind of stuck with having to manage and navigate the consequences of that.
So, do you think it's rooted in something healthy, or do you think there's maybe some other
Ooh.
reasons that why people might be choosing? I guess it could be both, right?
It could be both, and I think the like of these aggressive transitions that I'm seeing where people are choosing to do it, um, in some ways, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's. I don't even know that I have an example of someone where I wouldn't have been like so just like fucking proud of what they've decided to do because it could have been even years in the making. And I know like 2025 has already thrown so many curveballs, but it's like it's that stuff that people have known is keeping them stuck, that is impacting their mental health, that is like just essentially making their lives kind of miserable. And so that's kind of what I mean when that like we're not going to take it vibe kicks in. It's just like a full I'm gonna renovate, I'm gonna clean house, I'm gonna do it all right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like the example I can think of on like a very personal level, not just job related, is like when you see someone after a breakup and they're like, I'm going to radically change my hair and I'm going to
Yes.
get this and I'm going to
Yeah.
do all these things. I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. And you're like, because you're like, no, I'm taking the bull by the horns.
Yeah.
This happened to me. I didn't like it. Now I need to find some way to like regain who I am as a
Yes.
person.
Yeah. And I will say like it was really weird because the month of April was strange in itself, but I like kind of had a pause from doing some of my private practice work. And so within just like 3 or 4 weeks, pausing sessions and then starting back up in May, the things that patients had done during that time, what in terms of the aggressive transition was like wild. Like maybe I don't know, things are kind of plain boring, simple or whatever in April. And when we met in May, they had decided, you know what, I think I should really to renovate my house, and like completely did the whole thing. Or, you know what, I don't really like this job. And so I've applied to another job, and now I've got the other job, and now I'm moving cross country. Like just these really big things. And it's kind of cool to see. I don't think you and I would have talked about it last time, but just like the way in which these like trends happen. Maybe I mentioned when we talked earlier that like of course people are coming to therapy and for coaching and all that stuff because they're trying to make a change, right? So that's not like unique when I'm looking at trends, but when these big shifts happen, when people are just as this collective trying to figure out how to change their life and doing it in these really big ways, I'm like, oh, something else, not to be too woo woo, but like something else is at work here. And like really to me reinforces that message of we're all in this together. And so like, I don't know, be kind to the guy next to you because they're really maybe going through it the same way too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that part specifically like resonates with me. Like, you know, we've talked about it before, like with my background, like before a podcast, before a book, before any of this other stuff, like I wrote a blog, and I still do. And the title of that blog is The Battle You Know Not. And it derives from that quote, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time when I'm in traffic and I see somebody acting chaotic or something. Like my wife's always like, wow, they're being cavalier about this and being kind of a jackass going through traffic. And you're like, maybe they have their pregnant wife in there and they're about to give birth. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Like you don't know. And the odds are probably not. They're probably just being selfish and like trying to get to their destination faster.
Right.
But we don't know.
No, and when we don't know, to that point too, we have two options, right? Like we can either, I'm thinking about this one road trip I did last summer where this guy was like he was riding my ass for so long. And so I didn't know what was going on. Are you being a jerk? Or like, is your invisible wife pregnant in the back there? But like, if you don't know the answer, and you're going to tell a story anyway, why make it the one that like that person is out to get you or that like something bad is going on, right? Like why not? Oh, they're going to go to have a baby or they're on their way to their surprise birthday or whatever, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't know.
Yeah.
And to your point, you're never going to know.
No.
So why do we but I'm curious from your experience, like why is it that we tend to gravitate towards the negative version of that story as opposed to the more positive version of that story?
I think it's a great question, and I am certain there is lots of like science and psychology to go with it. Just kind of my more simple response when people ask me that is, I think it is definitely a matter of habit because at this point, right, as adults, we're kind of prone to do that. But how does the habit get created? It's something that we learn. And so it may be by either our home life, our society, culture, I don't know, TV that we're watching or whatever. There is this like thing that happens, I think, from a young age where we learn to look for the bad more easily. And so whether it's because we're being critical or insecure or low self-esteem or whatever, right? All these things that can be contributing to that. And so to be able to switch it, to think about the good story instead of the bad story, it doesn't necessarily come naturally for a lot of people, not at first at least. And it really does take some effort and some practice to do that. And I don't know, I guess on that point, I'll say too, if that is something that you're trying to do, it's kind of like looking at really easy neutral spaces to do that initially. And so I think the driving example actually may be one that is, if you're driving every day, that's accessible and user friendly, right? To like practice, when I notice I'm getting pissed off because this guy's being a jerk in the car next to me, immediately couple it with, I don't know what's going on. And also, here's a good alternative to this story. So I don't mean it as being like Susie Sunshine, but also to give yourself a chance to like practice building that muscle where the go-to isn't to think the bad story.
Right, because at the end of the day, you're in this place where, like you said, we're not going to get the answer anyway. But if you go into it with this negativity, you're drawing up something that you don't actually know, and now it's affecting your mood.
Yeah.
It's affecting how you're showing up.
Yeah.
And that's where I draw the line. It's one thing, like whatever they're doing is they're doing, and you're never going to get that information.
Yeah.
But now to let it dictate how you're going to feel for the next hour, 2 hours, how you're going to carry yourself to wherever you walk into your next situation.
Right.
Like that's where I think we as people can like take more self-ownership and say, hey, I have no idea what's going on in this person. For all I know, it could be something very serious. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to be the safe driver that I can be, and I'm going to assume that they're doing what's in their best interest, and we'll all move on happier with our lives.
That is like one of my personal mantras. And maybe Bernie Brown might have said it like back in the day, but like assuming I'm making the choices today like the best way I know how to, right? I am doing the best I can today, even if my best is like pretty shitty. It's the best I can show up today. And so kind of thinking about that for other people, having a little bit of like curiosity or understanding towards where they might be with things. It's like, well, I don't know, that maybe being a jerk on the road is the best that they can be today because they can't do any better right now. So, yeah, I guess, sorry, just kind of laying that thought through a little bit more too, thinking about like, then when we do that, then maybe typically, hopefully, we are less inclined to like engage with it, which helps to de-escalate it. And so, I don't know. People are really unpredictable these days too. So it's best not to engage.
Right. But at the same time, it's like, so then the question becomes like, what does the individual do? And so like kind of recapping everything you were saying, I have a little bit grittier version of how I put that, which is people who know me personally know I'm a big poker player. And that's been a huge part of my life. I literally have a ace of spades tattooed on my arm because, which is a reference, it's a callback to the movie Rounders, Matt Damon movie from back in the day. And Edward Norton and an amazing John Malkovich. Horrible accent, but like it's so funny. It's awesome. So the reason I bring up poker is because to me, like life is one giant game of poker.
Yeah.
We are all going to get dealt a hand. We're all going to get dealt a number of hands, and it's not what hand you're dealt. It's how you learn to play it.
Yeah.
And not everyone will be. There are plenty of people that get dealt 2 aces to start the hand and somehow fuck it up.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of people that are dealt 7-2 offsuit, which is statistically the worst hand in poker, and manage to figure out a way to make it happen. And it's everything in between, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like I can't control what cards all these people have. I can't control what cards the dealer's going to put out there in front of us. All I can control is how I play my hand.
Yeah. And yes to all of it. And I think even more so, and for everything we're talking about here, like I'm very generally speaking, I know that there's outliers to situations and people and cases and all that stuff, but like generally speaking, it also speaks to the resiliency that one is able to like persevere and overcome. And the resiliency piece comes from, I mean, I'm sure there's a person out there who is resilient 100% on their own because they are just that person. But otherwise, like it's because our environment and our like our family or our school or whoever is in our support group has like encouraged that and said you are going to be okay, like keep going. So yeah.
But that's assuming they have that person.
No, that's what I'm saying, and it is kind of like not everybody does, and so it doesn't mean that somebody still can't overcome a situation, right? And like I don't know how poker works. Turn that bad hand into the aces or whatever, but if you don't have that support, it's really it's an uphill battle because it's just really challenging to learn resiliency when you don't have that message coming to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you haven't had a good example of like what it means to be resilient in spite of everything around you, then like what hope is there for you?
Yeah, and when I was out yesterday, I was talking to my neighbor. She owns the bar down the street, and she was just saying, like, in the last couple of years, the last 2 years, she has invested in the bar, like, is now part owner. She has paid off a $50,000 loan, bought a house, like, got a car, and she's worked her ass off for that. And so I just sort of think too about resiliency when it comes to a person like that. She was saying she grew up very poor. She didn't have much. And so not to say that her family was cheering her on, but sometimes it's just kind of seeing, okay, this is what it looks like if I don't move forward. I don't want that, so I'm going to keep pushing on, right? Like sometimes that's how we can rally it from within, I think.
Yeah, because I think there's two parts to that. One, it's
Yeah.
like confidence has to be built brick by brick.
Yeah.
And you need a stack of overwhelming evidence to tell you that, like, I can do this. And so, at her point, so every step of the way, she does this, then she does that. And every single one of those can help build that resiliency because
Yeah.
she now has reinforcement of, like, oh no, I've been through the bad season.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've weathered that storm. So that's one aspect. But then you have the other part of this, which is also sometimes the best examples are what not to be.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I guess just to make sure to be really, really clear, I'm thinking about a CEU I went to on trauma and trauma in the brain and kind of how that looks like for children and developing into adults. And their point too was very much on that resiliency piece. Like that is what helps us get past trauma or like through the trauma and become healthy adults. And again, that isn't always available to have that support system. And so it doesn't mean you can't come through it, but it requires either you to kind of be savvy enough to like make that distinguish, right? Like of like, I don't want this and I'm going to try to do better for myself, or to ask for help or whatever. So hopefully, nowadays, I mean, my God, I love to see it, but even these like small children, they know what mental health is right now. They know better or easier how to ask for help than probably I did, or certainly my parents did. You know what I mean? So anyway, hopefully it's kind of like shifting into this more mainstream thing where resiliency could be more available to more people.
Okay, so then tying it back to the original beginning of this episode, so then how do you feel like resiliency impacts that aggressive transition? Is it that person is so resilient that they're like, I can do this? Or is it like, this is the ultimate test of how resilient I am?
Yeah, I think, and I don't mean to keep saying both, but I think, but it's both also. It just kind of depends on what side you're on. And so I know like some people, for example, who have lost their jobs due to all the stuff that's going on. Some people are like, they haven't practiced resiliency or their therapy skills or like healthy coping, all of those things over time. And so then you get to this point, maybe you've been dreading it and thinking, okay, layoffs are coming, yada, yada, but you didn't really think about what is that going to look like if it happens to me? And you weren't in a very good place to start, right? And so then it's kind of like, well, this is just my luck, and nothing good ever happens. And there's a time of wallowing, and some people get stuck in that, and eventually maybe some people can like overcome it. For the other people who have been kind of consistently like reality checking thoughts, challenging mental health stuff, like kind of always working on themselves, when this big change happens, they're like, all right, fuck it. I'm going to take a couple days off and I'm going to regroup. And then here's what I'm going to do, starting next week or next month. I'm going to, apply for jobs. I'm going to fill my time with like doing maybe some fun things and like have a little bit more balance than maybe I used to. Kind of seize the day,
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a couple of interesting points there. I think the biggest one to me, when you're thinking about how people get it, because some of it, at the end of the day, like what we're seeing in the economy with jobs and people, like, look, this is what I'm about to say is a lot easier said than done, but there are plenty of scenarios where I've seen people I know, and it's like, I'm not saying that they asked for what happened to them with being laid off or something like that at all. I want to be very clear. That's not what I mean. But they also didn't set themselves up for success. They didn't.
Yes.
They didn't like there are practical steps. Look, I get it. If you are truly paycheck to paycheck, because a lot of people in this country are.
Yeah.
A lot of people in this country are truly paycheck to paycheck because that's how much they're getting paid. That is the cost of living where they live. And like, this is not who I'm speaking to. Those people are doing the very best they can, and I'm rooting for them. And I hope, and this is not advice for you. Yeah. There are also a number of people I've met in like the white collar world who, like, as they get that raise, as they get that promotion, they keep having that lifestyle creep, and then their bills just keep matching their income, and they don't put anything away, and they don't set themselves up for the success. And then inevitably, when, like, there's a bad season and things happen, they have nowhere to go, and then it's like all of a sudden their world is rocked. It's like, well, you could have, there were some steps you could have taken along the way to give yourself way more wiggle room. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, and I again, just like very much generalizing the scenario that you're describing here too, like, as that person keeps like climbing up the ladder or whatever, I know that there's a very healthy person that exists out there that this does not apply to. However, for some people, as you are doing that and on paper reaching those milestones and doing just like high productive, you're getting the awards, there are definitely signs that are going on that maybe you are not happy, that you are not living your most authentic life, that you don't have as much purpose. Like there are things, and so that, to your point, right, like amongst other things that you could be doing besides like maybe putting money away and just kind of planning properly, like also making sure that whether it's with therapy or coaching or friend, family, whoever, making sure you have that like built-in support system as well.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it is like who you spend the most time with.
Truly.
And it's like, if you don't surround yourself with people that are good supporters, because like inevitably we all need help at some point in time, and I get it, because not everyone's born into a family that is like a great support system in that way, right, but then it's like, what about the people that you choose to spend time with? Right.
What do you and I know you know this, right, but what about the people you choose to spend time with? What about the things on the internet that you're looking at? What about the shows that you're watching or the music that you're listening to? Like, there is some we talk about basics, right? There's some very like simple things that you can do to just change the tone. You don't have to be Susie Sunshine, but you can like expose yourself to pleasantries. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I know what you mean, because like we talked about this before. Like, people love to blame the algorithm for, oh my God, all this negativity on social media. It's like, okay, at a very basic level, you don't have to be a computer scientist to understand that the algorithm has one job. To get you to keep consuming. And its only way it can do that is if you're consuming it, and it can report back on the information and then give you more of the same things you're already consuming. So you can say all you want, there's all that negativity, but that means you're choosing to engage with it.
Oh, 100%.
And it's giving you more of that. So it's like, at a certain point, you only have yourself to blame for this negativity you're seeing. But if you actively make a choice to say, I'm only going to engage in and watch content that's about music or about positivity and stuff. Right. Like, and again, your point, you don't have to be Susie Sunshine all the time, but like, you are what you choose to consume. The same with your television choices, all that stuff. Like, it's healthy to watch like a fun, dramatic show, but like, if that's all you watch all the time, it's pretty dark.
It is. I will just say to that point too, it is. I mean, it's low-key brainwashing, and there's probably like a more pleasant word to use than that, but that is what it is, right? So like, I cannot be the only one who experiences this, but like if you watch if you binged Mad Men, a cigarette and a cocktail look really good because you're exposed to it the whole time, right? Like, watch Breaking Bad, you think maybe you could cook meth. You know what I mean? Like, just kidding. But it is just that like, that low-key exposure to that mentality that like you do have control over that piece. And I am also saying this from a very like, I'm making it sound easier than it is, because there's also that addictive piece to it. Sometimes it's a lack of awareness to it, because we don't want to give all that stuff credit, because not me, that couldn't happen to me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That's affecting those people, but me, I have control over this.
That's not,
Oh, that was me with it's funny you said cigarettes. Like, that was me with cigarettes.
Oh, yeah.
Me and smoking as a whole, I was convinced I had complete control over it all the time. And I think in some parts I did for a while, to be honest. But eventually it didn't. I lost that control. And I couldn't go more than X amount of time without taking a drag and doing that. And so that was actually the part that made me quit.
Wow.
This was like, oh, crap, what are we talking about now? This would have been it's about 5 years ago. Wow, that's
pretty
crazy.
big.
I didn't
Gosh,
think about that.
especially 5 years ago to have done that. That's actually a really big deal.
Yeah, it was like December 2020.
Wow.
I just cold turkey. I said I'm done, and I quit. And
That's
since then I've taken like 2 drags of cigarettes since that time. Only and like truly to prove to myself that I'm back in control.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I was like, one was at my bachelor party, and one was just out with friends, and I was like, and they were years apart, and I was like, see, I can do this, and I'll never want another one again.
that's it is that's kind of a gift. Not a lot of people get to quit smoking like that. And I'm thinking about you doing it during the pandemic too. That would have been like high time to like lean into the stress, you know?
So that's what happened. Like, I think the pandemic, I was at home all the time.
Yeah.
And I had the freedom to just smoke whenever I wanted.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, this is now getting to that like unfun place that I
Yeah.
don't want to be. So the control piece of that is huge. So to that point, like it's how do we all think we have control over something until we don't.
Right. Yeah.
Every drug addict has ever said like, oh, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It is really
Until you don't.
Until you don't. Yeah. I mean, I worked in drug rehab for years and years. I mean, I board licensed in it, so it's like I've been around for a long time. And have I ever met one person who like didn't think that? I don't think so, because it always starts, just a party at first. So
It always is.
Escalates. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, were you gonna say something?
No, I was just acknowledging what you said. No, I mean, we've talked about some pretty cool stuff with this, and the aggressive transition. Though I want to go back and bring it full circle with this, because like we've talked about control, we've talked about the place of it. So if someone is in one of those seasons where it's like they feel like it's the time to make the radical change, and again, it can be something as simple as I'm gonna change my hair
Cut
to
my hair,
I'm moving across the or it can be as drastic as I'm moving across the country, starting a new job, all those things.
Yeah.
What would you kind of say is a good baseline piece of like something to think about for them? Not advice, just something to think about when they're contemplating that season.
I'm going to tell you exactly what I told one of my best friends is like very, very much in that season right now for their first time ever. And it's changed. Yeah. Gonna quit the job, gonna move cross country, gonna sell my house. I'm gonna do all the things. Right. And so this is what I told her. This is what I'll tell y'all is, when you see that coming, like, yes, use your supports, like inform them. If you're not in therapy or what, like get all that set up too, right? Because that's going to help you through the transition. But also name your 2 or 3 like non-negotiables that you are going to make sure that you maintain during that transition time. Because when the transition comes, I mean, it's essentially for my friend here, she's basically exploding her life, right? Because it needs to be burned down so she can rise from the ashes. And so even if it's like, it doesn't have to be anything major, right? Like I'm going to make sure if I can't do anything else, I'm going to get a high protein, 30 grams of protein at breakfast, right? I am going to make sure I get 5 minutes of sunshine. Like keep it simple so that you can actually keep it consistent with it, keep it up. But yeah, finding a couple things that are your non-negotiables that you have control over during this time that are going to help maintain just your basic needs and keep you steady. That is like my biggest suggestion.
Okay. No, I like the non-negotiables. I think that's something everyone could use. Is just saying like, hey, these are the handful of things that like bring me peace, that bring me a sense of normalcy, that give me, because it's hard and it's really easy to maintain those when things are going well, but when things are in that uneasy season, that's when those things you can kind of fall back on. It's like, okay, but I'm going to do this. Yeah. I'm going to feel better because I did this, and at least I have this going for me.
And the last point I'll make on it is like, yes, you don't have to be in a big life transition to do those things, right? If you're having more anxiety, if you're having some ADHD symptoms, rage, if you are OCD even, or depression symptoms, this is why I make it about getting back to basics, because doing those really simple things, I mean, is it going to solve all your problems? I hope. but is it going to help make things better? Yes, because at the end of the day, you do your, couple non-negotiables. One, you feel successful at the end of the day because you did something and not nothing. And that's towards the big goal. And then two, you feel like, okay, well, this is in my control. This my eggs for breakfast is my safe space right now, right? Like it really it all sounds really too simple, I know, but the mental health benefits of just doing something like this is really impactful.
Love it. I love it. Well, I know we are at the 30-minute mark, which is something we already agreed upon. So,
Yep.
but if you're thinking to yourself, that wasn't enough, I need more Rachel and Will having good conversations, you're in luck, because Rachel's going to be a regular recurring on this show because, as I mentioned at the top, I care very deeply about my mission in this to bring stories, bring things that impact and resonate with people. But I also am a big believer in having practical and expert-led advice. So Rachel being a licensed therapist means the world to me. So she's going to be a regular, series regular on this, as we would call it, maybe in the television
Ooh,
world.
yes, yeah.
So
My mom will be
excited
proud, yeah.
for the whole 20 people that are watching. I'm just kidding. But Rachel, in the interim, where can people find you, and what can they do to keep in touch with you?
Oh, thanks so much. I am so glad to be here. If you want some more tips and tricks kind of along these same lines, you can follow me at Instagram, which is back and then the number 2 Basics Therapy LLC. That is also my website, www.backtobasicstherapyllc.com. And yeah, then all my contact information is on there as well. So, or you just reach out to the man himself, and Will can redirect you. So,
Yes, I will definitely redirect you to Rachel. I appreciate you all for listening in. Please be kind to each other, and we'll see you next time.
bye guys.